BBC, and so on. Warnings by over 11 countries, warning of impending attacks, warning U.S. officials. Okay? And then, in particular, we have Russian President Vladimir Putin. Just 4 days after the attacks, listen to what he says. I ordered my intelligence to warn President Bush in the strongest terms, this would be before 9/11, that 25 terrorists were getting ready to attack the U.S., including important government buildings like the Pentagon. Jane's Intelligence Digest, another respected outlet. It is rather strange. The U.S. media seems to be ignoring what may be the most explosive story since the 11 September attacks, this foreknowledge that they were coming. Bush, of course, denied any foreknowledge. Now, here's another element that speaks of foreknowledge. You see this fellow in an interview 2 days after the attacks to Dan Rather. His name is Tom Kenny. He said, very matter-of-factly, we're currently one of the first teams that was deployed to support the city of New York in this disaster. We arrived on late Monday night, that would be the 10th of September, and went right into action Tuesday morning. They were already there in Manhattan with their equipment, hundreds of emergency workers. Now, this is confirmed by Mayor Giuliani in his testimony to the 9/11 Commission, which testimony was not included in the final 9/11 Commission report. He said, the reason Pier 92, not too far from the World Trade Center, was selected as a command center was because on the next day, September 12th, Pier 92 was going to have a drill, an exercise from the federal government, the state, from FEMA, and so on. They were getting ready for a drill for a biochemical attack. So that was going to be the place they were going to have the drill. The equipment was already there. Now, folks, that's efficiency. You think about, right, the day before, they're already hundreds with the equipment needed for 9/11 in the right place. It's just a remarkable. Maybe they probably were rewarded for their great efficiency, but to me, it raises a red flag of suspicion again, that there was foreknowledge there. You think about what happened at Katrina, the hurricane that hit New Orleans. Was FEMA Johnny on the spot? No, it was days. It just dragged out until they finally got there. Here, they were there the day before. I'm sorry, I'm very suspicious about this, and I would like to find out who ordered the FEMA exercise. As word about this and knowledge about this has gone around the United States, cities that are expecting a FEMA exercise have actually turned FEMA down. They say, we don't want your exercise. Why don't you take it to, I don't know, New York or someplace, you know? Why is that? It's like, yeah, we're starting to wise up a little bit here. Next question, why were there no air defenses on 9/11? Associated Press report noted the scrambling of fighter aircraft at the first sign of trouble, such as a hijacking or even a commercial plane going significantly off course, is a routine phenomenon. In the year before 9/11, fighters were scrambled 67 times. This is not an unusual event. A Boston Globe, a NORAD spokesman says its fighters routinely intercept aircraft. When planes are intercepted, they typically are handled with a graduated response. They don't just go up and shoot down a commercial plane because it's off course or even hijacked. They try to get the plane to land safely. Okay, this is not. There's this supposition that if you go up, these fighters are just going to shoot the plane. No, but these. Let's look at them. Let me come back here. These flights, the American and United flights that were off course. These are the three planes that actually collided with buildings on 9/11. You notice I've assembled the data here so that you can see when the planes were taken over. That means they're off course. And for instance, American Airlines 11 was taken over at 8:20. It crashed at 8:46. You see, so there's 26 minutes. Actually, that's plenty of time to respond. United Airlines 175, 8:42 was taken over. It crashed at 9:03. The main one I want to call your attention to here is American Airlines 77, taken over and off course at 8:46. Did not hit the Pentagon until 9:38. That's over 50 minutes where it's off course, and there were no air defenses to protect the lives of the people on the plane as well as in the Pentagon. Now, let's look at that. Here's Secretary Mineta, one of the chief whistleblowers of what really happened on 9/11. I hope you've got your critical thinking hat on, students, as we read the testimony of Norman Mineta, who was at the time the Secretary of Transportation in the Bush-Cheney administration. Here's an honest man, a Democrat, I might say, who was chosen to be Secretary of Transportation. And the situation is this: because he's the Secretary of Transportation, he was called into this underground command center, which is below the White House. Vice President Cheney was already there in command. President Bush, you remember, was in Florida reading about goats to the children. That's another story. Suspicious, I think, that he was not whisked away after the second tower was hit. He sat there reading about goats for another 15, 20 minutes. Why didn't the Secret Service take him out of there? He was endangering these students by being present. We were under attack. He sat there. But that is another issue. Let's come back to Secretary Mineta in the command center under the White House. During the time that the airplane was coming into the Pentagon, he later confirmed this is the case. This is the plane that was coming into the Pentagon, and they are tracking it. People there tracking it. There was a young man who would come in and say to the Vice President, Cheney, the plane is 50 miles out, plenty of time to scramble jets and intercept and try to get that plane to land safely. Plenty of time. Then the plane is 30 miles out. Now we're getting down to the last chance. When it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the Vice President, now, here's a young man that has some courage, right? He's challenging Dick Cheney to do something, right? I'd like to know who this young man is. He should testify about what happened and these orders. Because nothing was done. So these were obviously not orders to shoot the plane down because it wasn't shot down. It wasn't even met in the normal interception protocol. Mr. Vice President, do the orders still stand? And the Vice President turned around and whipped his neck around and said, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary? Approximately 2.5 minutes later, over 180 lives were snuffed out. Nothing was done, people. Now, I raised this issue with others in about May, June of 2006, and I called for redress under the Constitution for impeachment of Dick Cheney. I felt I had the right to do that as a United States citizen, that he should have a fair trial. That's what impeachment means. I think I'll continue that story just a little bit. Right soon after that, speaking as an American citizen, not as a professor at Brigham Young University, but university officials approached me soon after that and said, please don't talk about Cheney. And so I didn't for a while. But in September, which would be about, June, July, about 3 months after I had talked about Cheney and requested impeachment, I was put on administrative leave. Do you know that I accepted early retirement? There's some pressure there. I retired in January of 2007. In April of 2007, 3 months later, Dick Cheney was given an honorary doctorate degree at Brigham Young University for public service. And I'll talk a little more So I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is, whoa. There's a little, I'm getting to be a little bit skeptical, But I just wanted to bring that in here because it is relevant to this question of what happened, of course, at the Pentagon. There was no warning either. Here's April Gallup. She was in the Pentagon when it was hit on 9/11. She was crippled. She's crippled today because of the event there in the Pentagon. It's unusual that her baby was with her. I've heard her speak. She said that what happened was she was coming in to work at the Pentagon, her job, and she called in. She said, I have my baby, I need to drop it off, so-and-so. And they said, don't bother, just bring the baby in. So she did. And she said there was no warning whatsoever. Now we know from Mineta that they were tracking the plane. There's plenty of time at 50 miles out to warn the people to get out of the Pentagon. So, this influences your life as well as mine, and I think it's important, and hers, very dramatically. She said that she was in the Pentagon, this tremendous collision. She blacked out, passed out from that, and when she came to, there was rubble all around. You can imagine her disorientation, and she couldn't find her baby. And so she reached over. She's a praying woman, and she reached over and found, as she looked around, she couldn't see it, but she reached over a wall and found the baby holder, lifted it up, and was able to get out of there. But she now wants to know, of course, why there was no warning. She's speaking out about this, and has a lawsuit, as I understand, trying to get information. Why was there no warning, Mr. Cheney? Why did you not do something to intercept this jet coming in? There's plenty of time. Why did you not listen to this young man who conscientiously asked why nothing was being done? Okay, now physics. Everybody take a deep breath so that we now talk about the nice cut and dried, but very interesting. I had a physics friend of mine, Dr. Campbell, who said to me as I reviewed some of these facts that we're learning about 9/11, he said, scientifically it's actually very exciting to see these puzzle pieces come together and make sense, and it all fits, and it looks like explosives. He admitted that. But he said, but I'm very sad for my country. World Trade Center 7 on the afternoon of 9/11 of 01, and it collapsed then 7 hours after the towers had fallen. In the photograph in the lower right, you see Building 7, viewed from the rubble of the World Trade Center area, and looking across. This would be the side that would be hit by debris from the World Trade Center. There's so much smoke in the area, it's hard to see much detail, but I don't see any huge gap. Of course, Building 7 stood for 7 hours after the collapse of the towers. So obviously it was not fatally damaged, it seems. 24 steel beam core columns, 57 perimeter columns, a very large building discussed by Richard Gage. So on the left you see World Trade Center 7 coming down. On the right, a controlled demolition using explosives. They compare remarkably. Both are straight down. I mean, how do you get fires to cause a 47-story building to come straight down onto its footprint? This was, of course, discussed at some length by my friend Richard Gage. The 9/11 Commission report failed to even mention the collapse of World Trade Center 7, so it must be important. They neglected Mineta's testimony as well. The FEMA report said, our best hypothesis has only a low probability of occurrence. Of course, we agree with that. And we quoted them saying this in our 14 points paper that I alluded to earlier. So now we have the official BBC and so on. Warnings by over 11 countries, warning of impending attacks, warning U.S. officials. Okay? And then in particular we have Russian President Vladimir Putin. Just 4 days after the attacks, he's Listen to what he says. I ordered my intelligence to warn President Bush in the strongest terms, this would be before 9/11, that 25 terrorists were getting ready to attack the U.S. Now, this is confirmed by Mayor Giuliani in his testimony to the 9/11 Commission, which testimony was not included in the final 9/11 Commission report. He said, the reason Pier 92, not too far from the World Trade Center, was selected as a command center was because on the next day, September 12th, Pier 92 was going to have a drill, an exercise from the federal government, the state, from FEMA, and so on. They were getting ready for it, including important government buildings like the Pentagon. Jane's Intelligence Digest, another respected outlet. It is rather strange. The U.S. media seems to be ignoring what may be the most explosive story since the 11 September attacks, this foreknowledge that they were coming. Bush, of course, denied any foreknowledge. Now, here's another element that speaks of foreknowledge. You see, this fellow in an interview 2 days after the attacks to Dan Rather, his name is Tom Kenny, he said very matter-of-factly, we're currently one of the first teams that was deployed to support the city of New York in this disaster. We arrived on late Monday night, that would be the 10th of September, and went right into action Tuesday morning. They were already there in Manhattan with their equipment, hundreds of emergency workers. Drill for biochemical attack. So that was going to be the place they were going to have the drill. The equipment was already there. Now, folks, that's efficiency. You think about, right, the day before, they're already hundreds with the equipment needed for 9/11 in the right place. It's just a remarkable. Maybe they probably were rewarded for their great efficiency, but to me, it raises a red flag of suspicion again, that there was foreknowledge there. You think about what happened at Katrina, the hurricane that hit